In this series, we've been seeking how to use our words to build and not to break. We've been talking about communication, and one of the stories that caught my imagination early on. Tress and I were fairly young in our marriage, and she had brought me this book called A Severe Mercy, and we were reading it in the car. And it's by a man named Sheldon Van Auken, and he talks about this love that he had with his wife. They were pagans at the time. That's how they described themselves. And so they would later come to know C.S. Lewis, be converted by C.S. Lewis, and so it's kind of their story of their journey. But one of the interesting pieces, what they would do this thing they called the shining barrier. Maybe you've never heard of it, maybe you have. That the shining barrier was this concept that they built where if they could just wed themselves together so tightly, they could have experiences together, they could understand each other so well, they would never be separated. And so they drove to the same elementary schools, they went into the classrooms, they looked at and read the exact same children's books that the other had read. They read all the same literature, they had the conversations, they met people. Anything they could do to experience the other person's life, they would experience, because they believed that would wed them so tightly there would be no bonds that could possibly break them. And so they did this for a very long time, became a very close couple in their minds. And that kind of captured me, because I was like, oh, that's the kind of marriage I want to have. I want to have the kind of bulletproof, shining barrier kind of marriage. And so Tress and I, when we started doing premarital counseling, it had been far enough in, we'd read enough material, we'd been practicing these things, we came to realize the shining barrier, while their idea was cool and interesting, the shining barrier was built off of something completely different that we didn't realize. And it was built off of something that I think many of us don't understand, that you can have that kind of bulletproof marriage if you're willing to go through one thing, and that's called conflict. Maybe you never thought of conflict as a positive thing. Maybe you've never thought of conflict in your marriage as something that's good. Maybe you've never experienced that. But conflict is a lot like this sucker here, a hammer. You know, hammers can be used in two different directions, right? In one sense, you can use it to destroy. We can break things apart. We can smash through all kinds of items. We can do demo day and have a blast with it. Or you can use it with a nail. You can use it to ensure that you're driving things together, bringing them close. But the impact of that hammer is what makes all the change. The same thing is true with conflict. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about conflict, knowing all the things we've already picked up, and we're going to kind of move forward. And so if you're new here, I want to welcome you. You're stepping into the middle of a series, it's okay. You can pick up all the rest of the series on YouTube, kind of go back and catch up with us. There's some good tools you're going to want to have, because I don't want you just jumping into conflict off of one sermon. But I'm going to lay out some conversation about conflict today. And our aim in this series is actually to help you build with your communication. In fact, Ephesians 4:29 says it this way: let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. So whether it's a conversation with your children, whether it's a conversation with your in-laws, whether it's a conversation with a friend or a coworker, we want our talk to build up. We want our conflicts to bring us together, not break us apart. We want to engage. So we've talked about it. We started with our words, and we said, hey, be careful. We're like 10-year-olds in a wood shop, right, with all kinds of words, ready to chop each other up and make a mess. So be careful with your words. Are they building or are they breaking? This card one kind of reminds us. Then we went into our mindset. Are we out assuming and accusing, or are we engaging with curiosity and trying to bring together? And are we in this space where, hey, there's nobody against each other here, or are we you against me? And then we stepped last week into, well, how do we listen to one another? And we discussed the fact that listening is simply about putting the other first. Listening and not being ready to speak, but wondering and asking questions and clarifying and validating in that conversation. So with some of those tools and skills, now we're ready to talk about conflict. We're ready to discuss conflict, not in an attack mode, but conflict as it comes naturally in the midst of your life. And it will happen with family. It will happen with friends. It will happen. And look, conflict can break, and this is our main point today. It can break you apart, but it's meant to build you together. It can smash things, or it can put things together. And our goal here is to put things together. You're like, where in the world are you getting this from? Conflict is bad. I know my Bible, being angry, bad, bad, bad. Conflict, no good. Some of you have been taught that conflict is a no-no. Like, you should never have conflict. You never saw conflict. You were ashamed when you raised your voice or you got emotional. No, you need to understand. The scriptures very clearly tell us that conflict is something that can build up when done rightly. It says that iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. Now, before you think that this is about actually sharpening tools, it's not. In fact, Proverbs 27:17 is saying here is a problem because iron cannot sharpen iron. A stronger metal must sharpen a weaker metal. You cannot sharpen a metal with its own, it just won't cut. It won't cause it to shave down. And so we know something else is going on here. Iron was a picture of tool. Iron was a picture of warfare. Iron is a picture of a sword. And so two swords are clinging together. They're on the practice field. They're sparring. They're having a simulated conflict. They're having some kind of conflict that sharpens the other person, enables them and makes them stronger. So we get this picture of a journey together in which we are going to enter into a conflict, a good conflict, not a bad one. But let me just start off right here. Fear of conflict is huge. And it's primarily because it's how we've seen it handled. Right? How many of you guys saw conflict in your home? You know, it was crazy, maybe it was raging, maybe it was angry, maybe it was something else. But look, conflict is always caught. It's not necessarily taught. Your parents didn't sit you down and go, son, this is how you're going to have conflict. Nobody did that. You pick up conflict. Anybody get me on that one, right? You catch conflict. You figure out how it's done by the people around you. That's what Proverbs 13 and 20 is talking about, and all kinds of things. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Here's the thing, what you're around is what you will oftentimes represent, what you'll end up picking up. You will catch these ideas around and you will take them into your life and you don't even realize you're doing it. So some of you saw conflict never happen. You literally grew up in what I would call an avoider home. In an avoider home, mom and dad never fought. Nobody ever fought. We never saw any conflict. In fact, you knew there was a problem and just nobody talked about it. It was just kind of like swept under the rug, stood on and walked away. Anybody have that family? Okay, I guarantee you, if you've had that family, you struggle with avoiding conflict. You'll people please, you'll engage, you'll actually do this, hold, explode! Anybody seen that one? That's an avoider conflict mentality. They hold, boom, then they blow up because they can't hold it anymore. Maybe you've seen some of that. Maybe you've seen the winner conflict. Some of you guys grew up in the home where mom or dad, they had to win the argument. Oh no, this is not over until they have won. And it got heated and hotter, and suddenly dishes are flying and things are being thrown and people are yelling and it's like, but somebody's gonna win and somebody's gonna lose. You likely grew up in that home until they got a divorce. Winter conflict homes are intense. They're difficult because somebody's got to win. It's an argument. It is a fight to the finish. And some of you have sat in a home of the martyr. There was conflict, and there was this fight, and it heated up, and then suddenly you knew who would do it. Mom or dad would just go, okay, whatever you want. And they would just give in. The conflict dissolved because somebody decided to quit. They just gave over everything. And so one parent walked over the other parent, or one person this can be on your team. You know the martyr on your team. They do everything for everybody, and then they secretly complain to you in the back room because they're the victim. Oh my gosh, they just asked me to do so much. It's like, and you're going like, dude, you do it to yourself. Some of you experience this with your children. You're like, hey, you can say no. And they're like, no, I can't. I just got to help. The martyr is a dangerous situation. And then some of you have been taught in your premarital counseling and areas is that the best way forward is compromise. Did you know compromise is necessary at times, but it is not the primary way to deal with conflict. Compromise, in fact, is a great way of just nobody being happy. Because nobody gets their needs met completely. Nobody gets their values valued completely. You kind of do it sometimes and sometimes the other, and it's kind of just like, meh. And compromise is a 50-50 deal. And it's where sometimes we do it your way, sometimes we don't. You might as well just live in two households. If you grew up in divorced homes where mom and dad were on separate places and they were remarried, you had one set of rules one place, one set of rules another place, and back and forth you went. In this compromise scenario where they've compromised on how they're going to, we'll do it this way in our house, you do it that way. You live in a compromised life. And you think that's how life works. It's not. When we deal with conflict, These bad models are surrounding us, influencing us, and when you don't think about it, you will, in the midst of stress, fall into what you know and have learned. Remember that. Naturally, as human beings, when we're under stressful conditions, we fall into what our parents have taught us. God set up the world so that our parents would be our primary disciplers and trainers and all of these things. And so in a fallen world, we pick up their fallen tendencies. And guess what? They brought two fallen tendencies from their families together. So we all got a big mess that we're learning from. It's awesome. No, it's not. And so what we need to see is, how do we have appropriate conflict? Well, again, we want no corrupting talk to come out of our mouths. We want to build. So let's go back to James. Remember what James has been teaching us in all these different spots. If you want to go back in your Bible, you can go back to James chapter 4 if you like, and you can jump in. But remember, he tells us what causes quarrels and what causes fights. And James tells us that what causes quarrels and fights among you, is it not this, that your passions, your desires are at war within you? You have one desire over another. Remember, we went through this whole process. You desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and you cannot obtain, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask. Underneath your conflict are one of two things. On one side, they are desires, needs that you have. Needs being, maybe it's a need to be respected. Maybe it's a need for just some comfort. And so your child is in need, and they come up to you, and that little kiddo's like, "Daddy, do you have a minute?" And you're like, "I'm sorry, babe, I've got to finish my work here," because you're focused on finishing whatever you're doing. And Dad, you're going to get it done first because your need is to complete the project, and their need is to have a hug. Guess what? That is a small way to have conflict. That doesn't seem like an intensely difficult situation, but it creates conflict in the need. Two different needs are approaching each other. One, the child needs to talk and have some comfort. The other is the dad needs some peace and get the thing done. And so who's going to pause? Who's going to move? Who's going to do this? And then you'll discover people do this differently. They'll avoid the conflict and just walk away. Some of them will expect the conflict and they'll start fighting. Others will compromise. Well, let me give you a quick hug and let me finish this. In fact, I'll hold you while I finish this. This isn't going to get done as fast. Whatever. No, you have to realize that it's the two needs meeting in this middle that's creating a conflict. It doesn't mean it has to be a fight, but it does create a conflict. Same thing with values. I mean, oh my goodness. I can remember dealing with parents in youth ministry all the time. There's these conflicts that exist within youth ministry that are inherent. Because the students, they come and they want to have value. They want to be valued by their lead. They want to know the sermon's got value. They want to have relationships, friendships. They want to have fun. Because I guarantee you, if they're not having fun, they're not getting something out of it that's valuable, and they don't have some good relationships, they're not coming back. Anybody agree with me on that? Well, mom and dad don't want those things. You know what mom and dad want? They want education. I want my kids to learn about Jesus. Number two, they want them to be safe. Oh, please make them safe. I don't want them hurt. I don't want them destroyed. And three, I want them to have the right kind of friends, which means that bad group of kids that you're bringing into the youth group, they don't belong there. But these are the kids that get along with. You're not allowed to get, oh, do you see the conflict immediately start brewing right here? And I used to manage this conflict within there because when I said the kids want to have fun, that means likely they want to get hurt. There's going to be risk involved, okay? Just FYI, helicopter parents, stop bubble wrapping your children. And at the same time, bubble wrap your children because we don't want to get sued. Okay, so here we go. Welcome to the conflict. Grew up in the 80s world where the kids are coming home latchkeys, and then we grow up and we're like, no, you cannot do anything. Sit in front of the computer. All right, and so look, what do you do when you've got one parent, say, who is risk averse, safety, and the other parent's going like, you know what? No, they need to get out there and take a risk in life because they got to get hurt. They got to bruise themselves, break a couple of eggs to make an omelet. No, yes. That is conflict. That's a fight waiting to happen for an early family. For a young, that's a difficult thing ready to go. On like vacation needs to be structured in order because I get stressed out. No, we need to have loose, open opportunities because we just want to hang and have some fun. It's a vacation. We get our work done before we play. Let's have dessert before we eat dinner. Those are just value differences. And when you meet those value differences, oh, it's going to be fun. You're going to have an intense kind of conflict. because values are conflicting. The question isn't whether you're going to have conflict. The question is, when you have conflict, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to compromise it? Are you going to avoid it? Are you just going to win because you're the value holder? No. See, here's the problem. There are bad forms of conflict. Those four are four types, but all bad forms of conflict do one thing. All bad conflict is incomplete, it embitters people, and it expands into worse territory. Once we understand that, if you start seeing these things, if you start seeing your conflict becoming incomplete, if you start realizing you're getting embittered, or you start seeing it growing into bigger and bigger issues, you are in a bad form of conflict. You're not going towards what I believe God would say it builds. Instead, we busted out the hammer to break. We're ready to destroy. So, what do I mean here by incomplete? Well, let's start this way. Paul tells us in this Ephesians text that we got, Ephesians chapter, a few verses later, we'll get 29, we're saying, hey, build each other up, don't break each other down. In verse 26, he puts it this way: be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. Anybody heard this one in your premarital or your counseling or anytime, right? This is not only should I listen before I speak, this is the other one. Don't let your anger disappear. And so all of you who are like, conflict now, this is your favorite verse. You're not going to let the day go by before we get this dealt with. And that's not really what it's saying. What it's implying in a proverbial sense is that we need to finish the conflict. You don't just let it sit there and keep going and keep going and keep going day after day after day. It's like it has a time, it has a little stamp on it that says expires by, and you need to get it done or it's going to spoil. Bad conflict doesn't get resolved. It doesn't end. It's incomplete. And so we don't sweep conflict under the rugs. Why is avoidance so bad? And it feels so good. Because avoidance enables you to keep going thinking things are good, but what all you've done is you've just devalued the person's values, or you've showed that you don't care about what they need. Stop and think about that. Whenever there's a value conflict, like I care about safety, no, I care about the kids being able to get out there and take risks, and we just ignore it. What am I telling you? I don't care that you want the kids to be safe. Is that really what you mean? Well, I don't care that our children have the ability to get out there and take risks in this world. Is that what you really mean? Because that's what we say when we avoid the conflict. I just don't want to talk about this. This is just too intense. You're just impossible to talk about this. With those kind of language, that's not helpful. You're going to destroy the opportunity to have an engagement that could actually bind you together when you come to resolution. But instead, you leave it incomplete, and therefore now you've devalued each other. You literally are telling each other, I don't care about what you feel, I don't care about what your value is. And so guess what? You've just sowed the opportunity to be two different people. You're increasing the likelihood that you're going to go separate ways because you have separate values. So don't ignore and sweep it under the rug. Don't push it down, and don't compromise it. Notice when you compromise, it's an incomplete set of values. It's like, well, I value what you value sometimes, but I don't value what you value sometimes. And sometimes I love you, sometimes I don't. And it starts to feel very odd, like I'll love you in so much as you give me what I give you. That kind of compromise is a really ugly thing in a marriage. It's not helpful in parenting because it tells them my love is conditional. My care for you is conditioned on if you care for me back. I fell out of love with you, therefore I will move on. That's a self-giving, self-taking kind of love. That's not the kind of love the Bible's talking about. If you're going to work off of love as a give-take relationship, it's going to destroy your marriage. That's called dating. Dating is a give-take relationship because you're trying to figure out, is this worth it? Where are we at? I took you out on paper, but all that kind of stuff. But then once you're married, that stops. Now it is a completely different thing. You cannot leave it incomplete with compromise. So that when your child needs a hug and they need comfort, you give them, like, okay, I'll give you a couple seconds. Let me finish. And then you start hammering, well, no, I'll give you a couple seconds. And now you're nagging each other. That's going to be a problem. I'll come to you when I'm done. Compromise. Or I'll love you until I'm finished, and nobody talks about what's really needing to get finished. Compromise is that simple way of only having this trade-off kind of relationship. And last one is you got to watch for covered conflict. This is probably the primary one. Most of us don't just ignore conflict, and most of us don't just compromise conflict away. Most of us just don't realize you didn't finish the conflict. This is one of those fun things we do in our premarital counseling, but Tress and I will be sitting there on the couch, and we'll take something like a book. In this case, I'll take the hammer, and we're both holding it. And so the two of us are holding the hammer, and we'll be like, okay, here's the issue. We're fighting over whatever, our values on risk or our values on safety. And it's like, no, value, safety, and back and forth. And then I go, and I push her. And then she lets go with his hand, and she pushes me, and I put this down, and we start pushing each other. And suddenly we're like, oh, so sorry we were pushing each other. You actually end up fighting dirty. Call each other a name, you say something mean, it's escalated, and then you ask each other to forgive each other for the things that you just said and the way you just treated each other, and you make up, and it's good makeup. And the bottom line is, you think you made up for the conflict. Where's the problem? On the table. You resolved how you fought. You didn't resolve what you were dealing with. It's called covered conflict. And there's probably more covered conflict in your relationships than you ever imagined. You probably asked for forgiveness for the way that you said something more often than, hey, we've never quite finished what we were talking about. And therefore, there's been no resolution. Norman H. Wright, who writes an amazing book for premarital counseling, and I would advise it for any relationship. In many cases, it's just good communication. He puts it this way. He says that when differences are buried, they're buried alive. And at some time, they will resurrect themselves. If you don't resolve the conflict, they're coming back, and they're coming back uglier. Because what happens is it's incomplete, and then it comes and it starts to embitter you. When you are devalued, notice what it says. If you don't finish it off, give no opportunity to the devil. It means if you don't finish it off, there's an opportunity for the devil. What does the devil want to do? He wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to destroy your relationship. He wants to destroy your reputation. He wants to destroy your values, what you need. He wants to kill you. He wants to suffocate you. He wants to destroy you. He wants to destroy both you and your kids. He wants to destroy you and your spouse. He wants to destroy your relationship so he can destroy your kids. He wants to destroy your relationship so he can distract you at work. He wants to destroy your workplace so it destroys your family home. He's just out for it, and his primary way to do that is make sure that you get bitter and angry and frustrated. And that's what you'll be if you constantly let conflict after conflict after conflict go by. Do I really need to talk to my boss about that? Yes, you do, in a right way. It's an opportunity to engage in better your relationship with your boss. It's an opportunity to engage in better your work world. But what we've been taught is you're not supposed to have conflict. Don't have conflict. Cut people off who have conflict with you. No. Nope with some nope sauce. That's just like out of there. And the reason why I say this is because you're giving opportunity for the devil to enter and make you embittered. Because guess what? When we don't have our values seen, engaged with, worked on, I am devalued. When I don't see my needs met, I'm talking emotional needs, and again, I need to say this, sex is not a need, FYI. Needs are food, water. Emotional needs are comfort and care and respect and love, and I need forgiveness, grace. There are things that you need, and when you don't receive those because you didn't ask for them, or when you did ask them, you are now uncared for. And when somebody feels uncared for and devalued, guess what you're going to have? A mess. The devil's in there. All they think about, you're going to be in the flesh mindset. You're going to be in this us against me mindset. It's going to be fight, fight, fight all the time. Some of you, when I went into over mindset conversation, some of you are going like, how would I ever get there? I've been so angry, so embittered, so difficult. I can't get out of it. It's always a fight. And the answer is you got to work through some forgiveness. You got to work through some grief. You got to start figuring out what you really need, and you got to start asking for it and standing up for it. You got to start having some conflict. Many of us, while we avoid the conflict, wind up creating embitteredness which begins to grow and it expands. Starts with just a spat, just as a difference of opinion. Norm Wright goes on, he says, then it turns into a quarrel, which is a heated debate. It's an argument. You're actually now verbally angry. You're feeling your temperature rise. When it doesn't get resolved, it turns into an actual fight, sometimes physical. Sometimes you're throwing things at each other, which becomes all-out war, which means I actually don't love you and you're my enemy. At that point, you're doomed. Contempt, the number one indicator of a marriage going towards divorce. Contempt, the number one indicator that a relationship is going to break apart. Friendship, work environment, you name it. And it doesn't start with contempt. You started with love. You started with excitement at your job place. You started with respect. But those needs not being met, those values not being heard, and you not resolving tension creates the destruction in the relationship. So what do? How do we have good conflict? Well, good conflict resolves. And when it's resolved, it makes you stronger. Remember, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. So good conflict resolves and makes you stronger. What do I mean by resolves? Well, what we see is that when good conflict resolves, it's going to be something that becomes yours, not mine. So it creates a link. You resolve a tension and a conflict so that what was mine and yours, my value, your value, becomes our value. This is the aim, that there's going to be the heat and the conflict because you got to meld the two together. They got to become something new. They got to become ours. They got to become our very thing and not mine and your thing. Compromise is mine and yours. Ours is this is resolved. And you're going to have to do that a few times, but we'll get into this. Resolution seeks the shift. This major shift from I value safety. Well, I value risk. I want them to take risks. Now you're going to have to go through listening skills. You're going to have to go through an engagement. Well, what do you mean? Do you mean that they should never take any risks? Well, no, I don't think they should ever take any risks. I mean, I just don't want them to get so hurt that they're going to lose their life. Do you really think they're going to lose their life? Well, do you think it's safe for them to go out there and put them into a situation where they're going to die? Well, not necessarily unless the military tells them, well, they should never join the military. Well, why not? What's wrong with the military? Do you think they're going to die joining the military? Well, they could. Well, let's talk about that. What are you looking for? And so you go back and forth. Anybody hearing the debate here? And as you're loving and listening and working, eventually what you begin to discover is like, look, I don't want our children to take unnecessary risks either. I want them to take the appropriate risks to get out there, but I also think that they have the right to choose. And guess what? Sometimes we don't have that right anymore. And I understand your fear. You need comfort. You need care. You need to know that God's got them. I think we need to take this to prayer. And I know I'm not saying that they should go out there and kill themselves. I don't really want them to join the military either because I'm afraid for them too. Whatever. Not saying that that's the case for some of you, but I'm saying that there are these conversations in the households. And eventually you become into this reality where you're like, you know what? We desire our children to take appropriate risks that won't destroy their lives, but will make them stronger. We both want that. Suddenly it's not risk and safety, it's boom, appropriate risks for the right things. That's what we'll aim at. That's what we'll teach them because they need to take those, but then we're going to set them free when it's their choice. Now you've resolved into a single value. Appropriate risk-taking, which values both safety and risk at the same time, and now it's yours. That's not compromise, that's new. And when you both own it fully and completely, you will own it without guilt. You will own it without further debate. In fact, you will both defend it. Now, it doesn't mean you eventually will fall back into your own values at times, that you'll defend it. You'll go, no, you're right. That's what we resolved. Sometimes life changes. Resolutions have to be re-resolved. Children grow up. And you go like, that kid's crazy. I'm far more with you on the safety side with this one. Like, we need to lean into that because they're going to kill themselves if we don't let them be. Or, you know, that kid is a homebody that will not leave. We need to push them out. We need to make them take risks. You see, when we resolve, it may adjust according to the situation, but you're continuing to work through those resolutions to produce a new singular idea. And this is difficult because it requires love. I'm not talking about I give you, you give me love. I'm talking about a self-sacrificial love, the kind of love that sacrifices your values. I love using this illustration. I've used it before, but I'll do it again. And that is, imagine with me that I was young, married man, as I once was, and we've got little kids, and my wife's working like crazy, trying to keep the house in order, and 4 kids running all over the place, and I go, hey, babe, guess what? Tonight, I got a babysitter all by myself. She faints, I get her back up, and I know that's odd, and hey, I've saved us some money. She faints again, I say, get her back up, and so now I go, like, here's what we're gonna do. They're going out babysitter, I'm going to take you wherever you want. Where do you want to eat tonight? Let's do this. She sits and thinks about it for a minute. She goes, ooh. And she would never say this now, but at the time it might have been true. I want to go to Miguel's Jr. And I'd be like, now, right there, I have 3 options. Option number 1. Are you kidding me? Miguel's Jr.? I go and find a babysitter. I get all this stuff set up, and I'm saving some money to take you to Miguel's Jr. I'm not taking you to Miguel's Jr. I'm taking you where I want to take you. I'm taking you to Ruth Chris, and we're going to eat steak and potatoes. Is that love? No. Thank you. That's not love. That's winning the conflict, but that's not love. Okay, another side is the martyr. Oh, okay. We'll go to Miguel's Jr. Sit down at the table. Are you having fun? Yeah, I'm having fun. You're grumpy, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're just like, you're no good. It's like, that's not what you were going to do at all. Is that love? No, thank you. Love it. No. Here's the hard part. Love says this, whoa, that's not really what I was thinking, but okay. I will absolutely take you where you want to go. Line. No, it's okay. If you had another plan, I would love to do that. Let's do what you want. You had planned. I don't need to go to Miguel's Jr. Why is that the next line in the story? Because to receive love, both sides must be humble. You must be humble to sacrifice your desires to take her to Miguel's Jr., or I must be. She must be humble enough to sacrifice my desire to have taken her somewhere else. And therefore, we're both racing to the bottom to serve each other in love. But in order to receive it, I must sacrifice these things. Love is not compromise. Love is literally the willingness to go, I love you, and that's maybe not what I desired, but I'm willing to give to you this, and I'm verbalizing it. It's martyrdom is to do it and then just be mad at it. This is the ability to do it because I truly love you. I feel no guilt, no qualms because I was serious. I offered you a real question. Where do you want to go? I'm not lying to you. I'm not worried about it because I didn't have a subtext in the midst of it all. When you have that kind of situation, you enter into this idea of resolving where you become one-minded. Complete my joy by being of the same mind, Paul says. The same love, being full accord in one mind. You end up gripped together, unified. Not of 2 minds working together, one mind, solidly locked in. Man, that's humbling. And that's powerful. So, how do you get there? Well, first of all, go back to the other and ask those questions. Am I using my words to build or am I using my words to break? Am I in the right mindset when you feel yourself falling out? Pause, 3 seconds. Am I assuming? Am I accusing? Am I against them? No, I want to be in this zone where we're together in this, solving this together. Then you're going to engage with listening. Are you putting them before you? Are you trying to understand and grasp what's going on? This is conflict 101. Asking questions, getting information, validating back. Then note there's some other little risks. Number 1, be ready to give a soft answer when it gets difficult. Soft answers turn away wrath, the scripture says, and a harsh word stirs up anger. I get it. There's this moment where this great idea pops into your head that you know, if you say this, oh, it's going to tick them off. And you want to. Anybody been there? Let me just advise you not to give in to that. If you're in the midst of a conflict, the last thing you want to do is throw a jab or win with a snarky comment because you've been used to it online. Better not practice that online, because what you practice online will come into real life. FYI. Watch your words. Be careful. Give a careful word. That's another way to say this. A careful answer turns away wrath. It's not like a soft word. What's a soft word? Well, it's said with a really fluffy sound. No, that's not a soft word. Soft words are carefully chosen words that understand how it will affect the other person. You know them. You know what dictionary it is. Avoid the words that are going to cause the triggers. Avoid the words that are going to cause the problems. Give a soft word to not stir them up into anger so you can engage. Pause at 3 seconds. Give that space, whatever you need, but give that soft reply. And then when you're trying to do this, make sure you're alone. Do it in private. Please don't have your conflict in the parking lot. Please do not have your conflict in the middle of the Chick-fil-A. My daughter asks and my son asks for you to please not do this, because there are plenty of people who have these conflicts in wide open areas. Jesus says, if your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you've gained your brother. Don't rebuke your coworker in front of everybody at the staff meeting. It's a great way to make friends and influence people. No. Do it privately. Get engaged in a private scenario so that it's a one-on-one conversation. Set them up to listen. Set them up so the conflict doesn't have to get as heated as it needs to be. It will be heated because when things are merging, there's heat. When things are friction, there's heat. There will be heat. That's not the problem. It's what you do with it. So get alone. Be private. Jesus tells us, don't just do it out in the open. And then be ready to deal with the barbs. They're coming. You're going to fling barbs. You're going to fling slights at each other. And so what you need to do is focus. You see, here's the reason you don't want to fling barbs and spikes at one another and jibs and all that stuff, is because you're dealing with a problem. And the second that you insult each other or you say something in that way, you create a new need. See, now I need to know, do you really care about me in this conversation? Not about the need I was asking for. And now in the new need, I have to deal with that one. And as you keep insulting each other, you produce all these new holes and these new needs that need to be resolved. It's best not to just go there. It's best not to make the accusations and cause the mess, because you want to focus on the topic. Focus is critical. I know it's hard because you're emotional. That's why you need to pause, breathe more, step back, take a deep breath, ask people to repeat themselves, ask questions. In other words, pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to yourself. How are you acting? Number 2, if your brother sins, rebuke him and then forgive him. Hey, that hurt. Did you mean to say that? Say that again. Pause. Did you know if you ask somebody who insults you to say it again, oftentimes they realize what they said and they'll apologize. If you'll just simply say, did you mean to insult me right now? It wakes them up enough to go like, no. And they'll say no because they're not going to go, yes, I did. You know, typically if they love you, it's not going to go that way. Or they may go like, you know what, that was just mean. I'm so sorry. And you need to forgive. If they're willing to, don't hold it on to them. They're like, well, you know what? Now I won because you had to apologize. You're not out to win. Wrong mindset. Forgive. Sins against you 7 times in the conversation and turns to you 7 times and says, sorry, I'm trying not to be mean and I keep messing it up. You must forgive. In the midst of this, it's not helpful to think because I got them to call me a name, I won. There's no winning. If it doesn't resolve, it's a bad conflict. You want to bring it together so it is going to build and not break. And so you need to resolve it. Now, there are times where you will not be able to. Might be coworkers, might be children, but when a conflict can't be resolved, try to be at peace with them as much as possible. That's what Romans 12:18 says. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. In other words, there are times where you can't, but you're going to do your best. There are times where you can't resolve things, but you're going to do your best. Paul should know. He had a good friend named Barnabas, and they loved to do ministry together. And then one day, Barnabas' nephew, John Mark, decides that he's going to abandon them on the mission trip. And so when Paul and Barnabas are going to go on a new one, Paul goes, we ain't taking that loafer with us. Mark's just going to abandon us again. And Barnabas goes, no, I rehabbed you. We're going to rehab him. I care about my nephew. I think he can do a great job. He's grown a lot since. No, he hasn't. Yes, he has. You're just a jerk. No, you're just a softie. Back and forth they went. Whatever happened, it didn't go well. It says they separated in a sense of, with a lot of contentiousness. They went their separate ways. Now, I don't think they lost their relationship. Which is clear because later, Paul would invite John Mark back onto his journeys with him. And I don't believe that Barnabas was written in a negative light. In fact, it was called the son of exhortation, encouragement. I think that Paul always had a heart for Barnabas. I think when they met together, they knew how to hug and know that they agreed to disagree, which is the critical point. Sometimes with his friends, sometimes when it's going to be with coworkers, sometimes when it's going to be with your children, you must agree to disagree. That doesn't mean chopping each other off. Doesn't mean shutting each other down. Doesn't mean, well, you don't agree with me, so I can't talk to you anymore. No, this is I need to try to be at peace as much as possible and agree to disagree. Who cares if you have different political opinions? How dare you call each other names? Don't do that. Who cares if you think that you should sell this in this way and they say, no, you should sell it that way. Why is that worth breaking your team up over? Why should we be engaged in conflict that is going to bring insult? No, we, as best as we can, live at peace with one another. Now, this is difficult when it comes to a marriage. What do you do when you can't resolve the conflict in a marriage? What do you do when you can't resolve the tension between two value systems or two sets of needs? Well, the scripture gives us answers to this one. It's in the book of Ephesians chapter 5. It says, first, to wives that you submit to your own husbands as the Lord. I know this is not like the most popular sentence in the Bible. And right now, some of you, I just took you on a journey in your mind, and you're like, okay, so hold on. What you're saying is if it's an irreconcilable situation, it's irreconcilable, you would let your husband lead it, and you would get behind him. The values are opposed, safety versus, I want him to be safe. No, I want him to take risks. And you're like, well, we can't solve this. Your husband gets the choice, scriptures say. You're like, well, that's not fair. What is up with that? Hold on. Well, hold on. The Bible's not done yet. It says, ladies, you get into the order zone. Just help order it and follow after their lead. But husbands, when you make the choice, love your wives. As Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Well, I get to make the choice. Yeah, with thinking about her and what's best for her and what she needs and what are her values. When you can't resolve, in the same way husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it. In other words, nourish and cherish your wife. If the choice you're going to use will create a lack of cherishing and a lack of nourishing, maybe you shouldn't make that choice. And if your wife knew you were thinking through what she needs and her values when you make the choice, guess what? It's going to make it far more likely she's going to get behind you when sometimes you have to choose against her. But there are going to be a lot of times where you're going to be like, I'm a dunderhead and I need to do what she said. She's got the right idea. And here's the thing. Here's how this works out. If he makes the choice and she goes behind you, if he's right, ladies, you need to go, wow, you were right. And if you choose her choice over yours and it turns out well, you go, wow, I'm so glad I chose your way. You were right. And if you choose her way and she was wrong, you get to say, wow, no, you don't say that. Ladies, you go, I'm sorry, you were right. And vice versa, men, if you choose the path and it goes wrong, you are the first to apologize and go, I was wrong. Own it. And you will find unity even when resolution isn't able to be met. Complicated thing, conflict. But the beautiful thing about it is that it binds us together when done rightly. One little conflict, link. And I went way over. But I want to pray for you. And we're going to sing. We're going to get out of here. Would you bow your heads? Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I'm going to have major conflict with the children's ministry. Ask that you'd be with me in that, and I pray that you would just bless us as we exit here with our conflict. God, allow us to worship you because you are the one who brought the conflict between us and you to resolve in you, Jesus. You're willing to be our great resolver, and so your spirit of resolution dwells with us. Teach us how to have that. It is in your name that we pray. Amen. Again, I need to encourage you to stand, sing with us, and get prayer if you need it. If you need to, go get your kids.